We speak of those of royal blood, blood relations, blood oaths. We say an innate trait is in the blood, and something that terrifies you makes your blood run cold. It is the link uniting family, races, and humanity itself, and the sustenance of vampires. Good evening. I am Lord Blood-Rah, and this is Deep in the Blood on the Unified Fear Theory. Throughout history, horror has expressed the darkest anxieties of humankind. What we fear says a lot about who we are. This is the Unified Fear Theory. Malaysian folklore speaks of a creature called the Penanggalat, an apparently normal woman by day. When night falls, her head flies from her body, spine, organs, and entrails trailing behind, to hunt women and children, to drain them of blood. The Adze of African myth takes the form of a firefly, crawling into homes through cracks in the walls or under doors to consume the blood of its sleeping victim, causing them to grow sick and die. In Australia, the Yaramayahu are small frog-like creatures who drop from the trees on unsuspecting travelers to drink their blood through suckers in their hands and feet. The majority of cultures around the world have myths and legends of beings that subsist on blood. The fear of having one's blood consumed, much like the fear of being eaten alive by a predator, is a primal fear stemming from humankind's prehistoric past. But blood holds a particular psychological significance. Blood is often used to describe a bond between people, as in blood relative or blood brother. Blood is also spoken of as the essence of one's personality, or soul. The phrase "blood will tell" means one's true nature cannot be concealed, that the traits we carry in the blood, genetically, will ultimately show through. The inference being that one's whole being, the entire person, is expressed in their blood, that the blood is the life. In Europe and the United States, our most familiar mythic blood drinker is the vampire, a being who rises from its grave by night to drink the blood of the living. There have, of course, been countless stories, novels, and movies made on the lore of vampires, each with their own take on the legend. In the most famous literary vampire tale, Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula, the vampire feeds on his victims slowly, night after night, growing stronger and younger as his victims wither and fade. The vampire, in effect, consumes the essence of his victims, even to the point of the domination and destruction of the victim's will and personality. By drinking the blood, the vampire consumes the person utterly. The 2020 BBC miniseries based on Dracula, written by Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, uses this facet of blood drinking to unique effect. In the series, Dracula actually absorbs the knowledge, memories, and traits of his victims, growing more powerful as he assimilates the essence of his prey, giving him entire lifetimes of experience to draw upon for his own ends. Very often in vampire films, especially in the 60s and 70s, the victims, usually women, fall under the enchantment of the seductive creature and offer their throats not only willingly, but with a sense of sexual expectation. And when the vampire feeds, the victim appears to be in ecstasy. The victim giving not just their body, but their entire being, represented in the blood, over to the vampire. The ultimate surrender. And most often in these films, once bitten by a vampire, the victims become vampires themselves. But in the Bram Stoker novel, for Dracula to create other vampires, he doesn't simply bite a victim. He must open a vein and feed his blood to a victim of his choice.
Dracula? Oh, what's he done to you, dear? Tell me.
He came to me. He opened a vein in his arm, and he made me drink.
In effect, sharing his essence, corrupting and transforming the victim from within. To this chosen one, Dracula grants the promise of life everlasting in exchange for service to him, a twisted reflection of the Christian belief in the redemption of the soul through the blood of Christ. The psychological significance of blood in vampire lore goes beyond the consumption and sharing of blood. Countess Elizabeth Bathory of Hungary, a real noblewoman born in the 14th century, was accused of torturing and killing hundreds of peasant girls and women, bathing in their blood to maintain her youth and beauty. While not a real vampire, in fact, there is substantial doubt that the stories of her atrocities are true. She is forever linked to the vampire myth. She has been called the Blood Countess in literature, and the 1971 Hammer horror film Countess Dracula features as its villain Countess Elizabeth Nadazde, the family name of the real-life Countess's husband, which, by custom, she never used. The film is a fictionalized story based on Countess Bathory's alleged vampiric crimes. The psychological image of a wealthy noblewoman killing poor peasants and servants to bathe in their blood in service of her own vanity is not only horrific and repugnant on a purely humanitarian level, it is also one of gross excess and obscene affluence. The rich not just benefiting from the labors of the poor, not just benefiting from the suffering and death of the poor, not even consuming the blood essence of the poor for sustenance, but using the blood essence of the poor merely as a grotesque spa treatment. The opulent indulgences of the ultra-rich taken to bloody extremes. There are, of course, many vampire films and stories that represent vampires as feral, bestial creatures, tearing open throats in order to feed. In these stories, blood serves as the obvious symbol of the horror and pain of the victim and the brutality of the vampire. But in stories and films in which the vampire is presented as a member of the wealthy elite and indulging in orgies of indiscriminate bloodletting, the vampire becomes the representation of the worst qualities or the worst stereotypes of the uber-rich, an ultimate upper class feeding on the lower classes, their life's blood having no more meaning than water. The top of the societal food chain, literally. Biologically, blood is the fluid that carries oxygen to all parts of the body, circulating by the action of the heart. Psychologically, blood is the visceral symbol of human connection and human identity, and the creatures that consume human blood will always be with us in the world of horror. Whether or not you agree with these observations on the nature of blood and horror, you must agree on one thing. The sight of one's own blood can be, to say the least, alarming. In fact, if you see too much of it, it could be the last thing you ever see. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Does the sight of blood in horror films have a unique effect on you? Please leave a comment below. If you enjoy these explorations into the world of horror, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.